Right, so welcome back to another episode. Today we've got Ashley Boroda here. Ashley is what do you do, Ashley? Let's bring you into it.
Okay.
I always do an intro and I think, let's just ask
Yeah, just because the person you're talking to tends to know, don't
Well,
they?
you'd hope so.
Yeah, and if they're learning it from you at this moment, you've put the wrong person.
Very much so.
I'm what is called an IMA practitioner.
Okay.
IMA, which is spelled IMA. It stands for Identify, Modify, Adapt, but doesn't really matter much. And what it is a non-psychometric communication and behavior tool. And it simply identifies that there are 4 styles of people, and I will explain as we go on how those 4 styles are made up. And the idea really, and I say this tongue in cheek, but I actually mean it. My mission is to stop people from annoying each other. And this is a really, really good way of doing it.
Yeah.
So it's not a journey of self-discovery. It's not about you. It's about learning about the 3 styles of people that you are not,
Okay.
being able to identify them, and then modifying and adapting your communication and behavior to fit them. So the well-known saying is, I'll start it and I'll get you to finish. Treat people how
You'd like to be treated.
Yeah, exactly. Which sounds very nice, but actually the magic of great communication is to treat people how they want to be treated. And all of a sudden, all your standard run-of-the-mill communication breakdowns fade away into the background. So that's all communication.
Yeah.
You and me now, if I'm emailing you, texting you, whatever it might be, leaving you a voice message, it has to be in your style if I know what your style is.
Interesting. How did IMA come around?
So there's lots of psychometrics that exist. And the man who invented it, James Knight, American, worked years ago for the Dale Carnegie organization, which they were using psychometrics. I mean, we're talking about many decades ago.
Yeah.
But he was finding that his clients didn't really remember each time he went back to see them what it was all about.
Yeah.
So he decided just for himself, he just took all the highlights and just made it easier to understand.
Yeah.
So for some time, the only person in the world using it was him with his clients. And then I think one of them, I can't remember, had said, this is bigger than you think. You need to do something else with it, which he has. And there's several of us practitioners that exist throughout the world. My concentration on it is training other people to use it.
So, did he have? There must have been some positive effects from using it then.
Significantly.
Yeah.
So you can imagine where there are breakdowns in communication. So since I've been using it, which is coming up 10 years in January,
Okay.
I've used it in all sorts of arenas. Most of my clients are training over the years have been professional services. So they've been financial institutions, law firms, accountancy firms. That happens to be, I'm going to say it's my sweet spot because it just happens to be where I ended up.
Yeah.
And I'm actually very happy working with those people. But in recent times, I've been working with 7 McDonald's franchises as well. So we'll come on to that because we're using that slightly differently in McDonald's.
Okay.
But one of the law firms took it up for their family department, so people divorcing or potentially divorcing, and using it as a mediation tool. So where it helped them, they kept saying to me, yeah, it's working really well. And I said, that's not a good enough answer because I'm not there. I need to quantify how it's working well. And the key element is, and I learned this from the legal mediators, which I've now obviously brought into my training and used a lot elsewhere, is he depersonalizes the conversation.
Okay.
So rather than it being between 2 people who are named because they find each other really annoying, it is about their IMA colors.
Right.
So there are 4 IMA colors. Let me explain that, shall I?
Yeah.
So the world divides into, firstly, the good news is this, right? The good news is that all of us are like 25% of the world's entire population, right? So you and I, if we might be in the same color, we might be in a different color, but the thing is there's another 2 billion people like us, which is a lot of people who communicate like us. Great news, isn't it? That's good. The not so good news is there are 6 billion people who don't communicate like us.
Right.
So we have commonality with 50% of those. And then there's 25% of the whole world's human population who, when we're really honest about it, we find more than a little annoying. And that's happily balanced by, that's exactly how I feel about us. So what happens is half the world are assertive people. So assertive people are people certainly very comfortable expressing their own opinions. They like working at pace and making decisions, and they're thinking about what's coming next pretty much all the time. I don't know if it's future orientation is the right expression, but that's the one I use. So the other half are non-assertive. So they're the opposite. So they're not going to express their opinions readily. They will if they decide, and that's for them to decide, it's a comfortable environment for them to express their opinion.
Sure.
They like working, with close consideration, with detail, taking their time, not having to make lots of decisions, and working in the here and now. So that's half. Then we divide again to what we will call left brain thinking people, logical people. So they are self-contained. They're not independent working. They're about thoughts and tasks. You go to them with a problem, they'll have a solution to that. But they're not going to be sharing their close personal details with anybody and everybody. Okay. The right brain thinking people, on the other hand, are open people. They'll talk to anybody about anything. That's the reality of that. Yeah. And they are much more relationship focused than task focused. They're much more about feelings than thoughts. They need people, right? They're looking for recognition, collaboration, congratulations. So which two of those four things decides your IMA color? And we call them the IMA high colors. So they're not just red, yellow, green, blue. They're high red, high yellow, high green, high blue. Okay. And the reason for that is this. We know everybody in some degree is a blend of all four styles. Yeah. And we know uniquely we're as unique as our thumbprint. However, we don't care about that. It's your highest color. It's the bit that is your dominant color and the thing that makes you easily identifiable. And once you start to know the people individually and identify their IMA colors, you'll see the way they behave and communicate is pattern program predictable. We know pretty much what they're going to do all the time in any given situation.
Interesting. Has there ever been an occasion where you struggled to identify someone's color?
Yeah, and I think that will always be the case. Yeah. There's somebody who I trained years ago, one of McDonald's franchise, who's annoyingly better than me at identifying. I mean, he's got an instantaneous talent for it. Okay. And he'll tell me in conversation, such and such a person, they're a high blue, and he instantly knows that. I'm pretty good at it, but I'm not. Sometimes I'm thinking, I'm not entirely sure. Yeah. But there's a questionnaire, and psychometrics, you have to answer loads of questions. For an IMA questionnaire, you only have to answer 10 questions. Okay. And they're questions like, in a situation, would you rather do A or B? That's it. Press radio buttons and off you go. So you instantaneously get to find out what your IMA color with a video explanation as to what that IMA color is. But it explains about your IMA color, not about the other three. Right. For that, you'd need a skilled practitioner like me to come in and explain it to
you. So how that come about? What's your background?
So my background is, for many years, I was working in media. Yeah. I was an agent for actors. My career started being an agent for actors and finished being an agent for comedians. But in between times, I was a gag writer for radio and television. I did stand-up in London on the circuit. I did radio and television productions, sometimes actually producing it. Other times I'd come up with the idea and write something and step away from it, depending what it is, just like I get paid for that without going in to do the work. I like that as an idea, actually. I can't pull that off often enough, really.
So you're around like personalities all the time?
All the time, absolutely. And then at the time, I wish I knew then what I know now. It would be really helpful. And I look back on some of the things and think, this is why those two people found each other really difficult to get along with. But if they knew how to communicate with each other, that would be great. So you learn what I'm training is you're learning about all 4 styles, so you know about yourself, and then you're thinking, well, I'm here, this person's here, this is how they want to be communicated with. And you would hope that if they know the same as you, which most people are not going to, they return the favour. So therefore, it's almost like you're talking to people of the same style. And you get on best with the people of your own style. They're the people who you rub along easiest with.
Okay.
But the people who are opposite, you have to make real effort to communicate with them. But there's a secret within this, and that is that the skill sets, our natural skill sets, also sit in those colours.
Okay.
And some of the work we're doing at McDonald's is we've colour coded the restaurants, because all their operating systems are identical everywhere, and the jobs are identical. So we've colour coded them so that the right people are in the right jobs, because people are good at jobs they like doing. They like jobs they're good at. So encourage that. So people who like people need to be customer facing. Those who struggle with the people, the left brain thinking people, not so often. I was out with one of the McDonald's franchisees last night, and he told me he had a brilliant, where the wrong person was in the wrong job at Manchester Airport in a lounge.
Yeah.
And he and his son had passes, and he met 2 people that he knew and said, I'll bring you in as guests. And the person didn't want to let him in. She kept saying, well, there's not a lot of room and all the rest of it. And he said, well, I'll get him to breathe in. And she said, I've heard that before. He wasn't getting anything. She said, they can stay for an hour. So she lets them in and has opened the door. The place is empty. So it's the fact that she's the wrong style of person to have been on the door, right? And she clearly has a degree of resentment because it's on a rota. They were rotaring doing things. And I go into many places and go, oh no, everyone has to do everybody else's job. And I'm going, stop that, right? It doesn't work. And you've only got to be your most important customer walks in at the very moment the wrong person's on reception, even if they're there for 5 minutes. That could have terrible consequences. So put the right people in the right jobs. And that, I think, is the message I'm really passionate about, is don't go and do jobs that you can't do because you don't like them and you're no good at them. There be something that you can do. Concentrate on that. And this is a great way of measuring it. So, if you're a high yellow, do a high yellow job, a high green, do a high green job, etc.
I had an experience on the way in there. I stopped in a petrol station, and I've actually worked the petrol station behind the till quite a lot many years ago. And this person more or less just ignored me the whole time in, and so I paid for it. You don't obviously give cash these days, and it said approved, and he's busy looking elsewhere. And I'm like, okay, so that's good. Yeah, good chat. See you later. And walked off. And I just thought, as little things like that give you a little bit of an impression that is negative. And you might go somewhere else next time. It's important, isn't it?
He shouldn't be there. That's the reality. Now, he's miserable being there. If you get a reception where you walk into a building and you've just got one person sat behind a desk, you're like walking a few feet from the door, and they don't look up. And that is because they're not a high yellow or a high blue. So they are either a high red or a high green, and they don't really want to talk to you. They are going to have to when you approach the desk. But there was a place in London recently where I actually had to say to them, what are you doing about your receptionist? Because the door went shh as I walked in. So she knew the door was open and someone had walked in. She didn't know me from who I was or why I was there. But it was like, I had to wait, and I'm still standing there going, look at me. Because you have to have a conversation. Now, I'm very sympathetic of those people because they've been put in the wrong place. That's the issue. But when you should be in a world where when I change the world, they'll be able to claim, wrong colour, I'm a colour job for me. I need to be moved.
So, we had Justin Morehouse on last week.
Oh, did you? I know Justin.
And really lovely guy. He gave us so much of his time. He's definitely, clearly, some form of high colour.
He's a high yellow, right? I know Justin.
And very, very quick. And I realised very quickly not to go into long stories about anything because his mind's working so quickly.
Incredible.
And it comes in, and then so I was like, okay, you're the person. You go. You talk.
Yeah.
And go. I find people's communication behavior really interesting. The thought that
Justin's also got years. I mean, he's a brilliant compere at a comedy show. I mean, he is brilliant. There's no question. I don't think I'm overplaying about how brilliant he is. But I've sat sometimes, I think the last time I saw him, he didn't even know I was there. But it's just how quick he is with responses to people in the audience. It's just, it's joyous. But it's nice. He's not attacking them either. It's
Not
always
at all,
delivered with love, I always think. No,
we
he's
said
brilliant.
at the end, we said, he can tell he's done this before. He's telling, his voice, everything.
Well, yeah,
it's on it straight away.
He was on Key 103, wasn't he? He is, so.
Yeah. So that kind of behavior and everything is really interesting. Why does someone do that role when he hated everything that he'd done before for 29 years and found comedy and is like, yeah, this is for me?
Because no one is telling you to find a job that matches your eye colour, are they? They'll say, here's a good career. So if you turn out you're good at maths or whatever it is, they'll send you down a numbers-related role, which you might be good at maths, but that's not really what you enjoy doing. You have no passion. And there'll be people who are better at it than you.
Yeah.
So let them get on with it. So it's important. I think it's important generally for the economy. You want the best people doing the best work.
Yeah.
You don't want to force people down the road. You go to school, you're not getting career advice based on your eye colour. You're getting it based on what people, your exam predictions and what other people think you're going to be good at. A parent, a guardian, a relative, a friend, peer pressure. You know what you'll be good at. So if you don't know what it is you want to do, you end up pursuing a path that's completely wrong. I've met dozens of people who've changed career. But the really depressing thing about it, James, is that they say, I'm now doing this and I love it. I should have done it years ago. And I want to go, you should never have done the other job at all because you've wasted like 20 years.
Yeah.
And you may have been well paid and all the rest of it, but you were miserable. You never got out of bed in the morning and gone, great, I'm going to work. And I think that's how the world should be. I think it would be much better if everyone just got up and thought, brilliant, this is what I'm doing today. And you still have a bad day when you get to work, obviously, because you don't know what's coming down the road. But on the whole, you're going to think it's a great thing. And if we can stop people from going into the wrong types of jobs, that would be fantastic.
Do you think what we find when I've spoken to others, when they realise, say if it's autism or ADHD and there's a diagnosis, there's a bit of a relaxation about themselves and that I understand that. Do you think that happens with the IMAC colours as well?
I think so. Yeah, absolutely. I think what I did learn very early on from using it is, probably just from my own experience, not just with other people, is that your level of tolerance increases significantly.
Yeah.
So whereas you'd be like getting annoyed with somebody, you would just be saying, oh, they're different, I'm a colour from me.
Yeah.
And the greatest way of communicating is also the very worst way of communicating, which is by email. And when I say it's greatest, because you can send all sorts of things via email very, very quickly. But your intonation is not clear.
Yeah.
So you innocently send an email to somebody, it arrives in their inbox, they read it and they're instantly irritated by that for no reason, actually. But other than it's not written in a style that they appreciate. So they then get annoyed about it. And there was no need to do that. So I'm saying stop people from annoying each other. So the idea is try and, in emails, you can really tell people's IMA colours. So I'll go through each of them. So the assertive and left-brain thinking people are high reds, and they're goal-driven people. So they are, I've got something I need to do, I'm going to do it, get out of my way. Very, very organised, very good at leading, quite often at the top of a business. So chief executive officers are very often going to be high reds, right? Because it's a high red job. When you're communicating with them, they're a bit like, be bright, be brief, be gone, right? Get out. Tell me what I want to know. Goodbye. Because I always sort of laugh at them because they always have this impression that they need to be somewhere else. I don't know they know where, but that's the thing. Do you know what I mean? I'm busy now. What do you want?
Yeah, yeah.
And that's the way in which they work. So if you know that, that's how you communicate with them.
Okay.
And when you get an email from them, so if a high red is sending you an email today, it's mostly identifiable unless they are aware of the fact that this is how they come across. It will forget the word hi at the beginning of that, and it just would say, James, this is what I want, out. And you can reply like that because they like that. So high yellows are then assertive but right brain thinking people. It's unusual for anybody to say about a high yellow in a group of people that they hadn't been noticed, right? Because they are like to be the center of attention. Yeah. They speak louder than everybody. They like people to like them. And they like to like people. They're very ideas driven. So, you know, if you don't like their first idea, it's really not too much of a problem because they've got hundreds. It's like a constant flow.
Yeah.
And the way that they work is via eye contact. Right. So I say to the other three styles of people, if you don't want to talk to them, don't look at them, right? But once you look at them, they see that as an opportunity for a conversation. Right. And they've also, I've seen over the years, particularly at the digital startups in Manchester, a combination of a high red and a high yellow starting it up together. And that makes perfect sense because more often than not, it's the high yellow's vision. So without them, there was nothing. But without the high red, it's never realized because the high yellow's got another idea, wants to go and do something else. And the high red's stopping them. That's how that works. But normally, because it has a degree of tech involved with it, they'll bring a high green in. So high greens are non-assertive, left-brain thinking people, highly logical, detail, accuracy, good with numbers, good with tech. I mean, we wouldn't have any tech that, you know, we probably wouldn't be here now without, well, the technology wouldn't exist without the high greens. We may still not have heard of it yet because they'd still be making it better and better and better. It's the other colours that make it come to market. Yeah. But that's what they do. So they'd probably bring in a high green at that point. And then they've got a high red who can sit between them because the high red's got commonality with both. It's assertive like the high yellow, left brain thinking like the high green, and therefore the three of them can work together. Right. And then you bring in high blues as time as necessary. So high blues are amiable, friendly, really good at building relationships long term. Right. So you're more likely to have a really long, detailed, nice conversation with a high blue, but you might have to initiate it with them as opposed to the other way around. Whereas high yellows are busy, they initiate a conversation with a stranger in the street. I'm a high yellow and get myself into all sorts of difficulties with my wife, who's a high red, because I start conversations with people who I don't know. And they're only for a minute or so, but in that minute, they're really meaningful. Particularly if the other person happens to be another high yellow, which the chances are they are because we've locked eyes and said something to each other. I've had some fantastic conversations on trains with people. But one, and only one time, I think there were, by coincidence, I mean, statistically this shouldn't keep happening, but all four people sat on the table on a Manchester to London train were all high yellows. Okay. And we were having a ball. I'm not sure the rest of the carriage were. Within that, though, probably, if anybody was like spying on us, we must have given away loads of personal information because we were just having a nice time and we were just talking. Gets rid of the time on the train really, really quickly. Yeah. But a high green would see that as hell. Okay. They would have their laptop up and their earphones in and they would be not even looking at you. Because they don't want to communicate in that way, which of course is absolutely fine. As I said, you get on best with your own, and then you have the people with commonality. High reds are the only group who can fall out amongst themselves, obviously, because you've got two high reds who both think they're right. Yeah. But that's a problem. So then it would be mediating by a high yellow. So I talk about a lot in my training about Sully. Do you remember him who landed the plane on the Hudson River? Yeah. Now, he's a high green. Okay. His co-pilot is a high green. And the film, did you see the film? Did you ever see the film? It was really good. Tom Hanks, he's a high green. See, they're not casting far away. But it's a high green job flying a plane. I don't think anybody else can pass those exams, but he was given a really difficult task. He lost both his engines and he looked about where he could land, and he landed on the Hudson, and he was an international hero.
Yeah.
But if you remember from the film, which I didn't actually know at the time, but the crash investigators said he was showing off and could have gone to New Jersey.
Right.
And high greens are not showing off at any point, right? That's not how they work.
Yeah.
But their information wasn't correct, and he had the detail which they didn't have.
Right.
And therefore, without his knowledge, and the plane would have crashed, but he had the detail and calm consideration to go and land that plane. And the other three styles would have struggled to do it. And the reason why is a high blue would have needed loads of reassurance that they were doing the right thing. And the clock is ticking. I worry that a high red would have thought, yeah, I can land that in New Jersey. Because they have that degree of like, yep, I'm certain here, this is my goal, I'm going to go and achieve it. And no one wants high yellows flying planes, so I'm hoping that's never a case. You don't want to get on the plane where the captain wants to tell you a funny story, at which point I'd get off.
I don't know. There's a few kind of pre-flight updates which, I thought, did you really say that?
Right.
There's one that I'm sure is a Sean Connery impression that.
Oh, really?
On. Yeah.
They're because high yellows are much more relaxed about taking a risk than the other three groups. And a plane is just not, I don't think, the environment for that. But within the cabin, you don't want high greens. You want them in the cockpit.
Yeah.
And you don't want high reds either. It's a
Interesting.
customer service event. So you've got high yellows and high blues. You've got a high yellow leading the cabin for several reasons, 3 reasons that come to mind. Number one is they're the assertive of the 2 stars. They're going to lead the group. They are, if there were 2 high reds who'd had a few to drink passengers and having a bit of an argument, they're the people who can mediate it because they're assertive enough to mediate it, but they want a happy ending. And then also the other thing about it is that job involves a lot of announcements. And high yellows like that, right? They like the sound of their own voice, particularly if you're in like EasyJet or one of those things where you're constantly selling things. You know, when you think like there's nothing left and the scratch cards come out. Yeah. But that's high yellow because they are naturally going to be good at selling. So I always tell the story, which it's based on truth, which is that the iPad dominates that whole tablet market. And yet Microsoft were developing their version of it, I think long before. But you can imagine the tech team in all these companies are going to be predominantly high greens.
Yeah.
But it's the rest of the system that matters. So Bill Gates is a high green. So if you're reporting into him and telling him about how much exciting it is while we keep developing it and adding loads of tech, he's excited by that, which slows the process down. At Apple, when they're reporting back in the day to Steve Jobs, he's saying, well, what is this extra tech? This is what I've made up in my head. Well, it's these things. And he said, well, iPad 2. Do you mean it's that thing? Let's go. And then you've got high blues to cooperate to make it to make it work. And then you've got high yellows to sales and marketing. So here's a question, right? So if you've got a sales and marketing team, the high yellows, little quiz moment for you. And I'm tasking them to target one of the 4 groups to be early adopters of my new piece of tech. Which color would I ask them to target, do you think?
Early adopters. Maybe the green for the stuff. No? Or do you want someone to talk about it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You target high yellows. Firstly, they're easy to target your own people.
Yeah.
But also, and actually I've got this a Justin story in here, come to think of it, which is really relevant. Is that, of course, they're going to tell everybody about it. And also, high yellows buy from other high yellows. That's the reality of it. So back in 2007, when Apple did the most outrageous thing, which was to launch the smartphone just onto the market. And I think you could only, I think it was O2 only that you could get it. So I was at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival that year, and most of the high yellow comedians had an iPhone, and they couldn't stop showing people. Justin was one of those. And he can correct me if I have remembered this incorrectly, But the thing he was obsessed with was there was an app. Remember, we didn't know what apps were.
Yeah.
That you could play bubble wrap. You could like burst the bubbles on the screen.
Amazing.
Yeah, but you couldn't send an email or make a phone call. I remember. But it works, right? The risk, Steve Jobs' risks work. Other people will tell people about it. And I think it was only like the third incarnation. The thing actually worked like we recognise now.
Yeah.
But High Yellow's did the job, and I was watching it
In real
happen.
time.
Yeah.
Must have been a fascinating time. How long were you around, actors and comedians for?
20 years, really. I think I started in 1990.
Yeah.
And sort of faded out 2011. Yeah, so yeah.
Wow. And how do you get into like being an agent for?
I just kept applying for jobs. I was an assistant agent and then got promoted to have an agent, what they call your own list.
Yeah.
And I found it quite a frustrating job, actually, to be honest. I don't even know why I ended up doing it again. I think that happened by accident because I still remembered how. But it is a frustrating job. Yeah, I'm good with people, but I'm probably not managing them day in, day out, because it's just, if you were just doing their work, but you're not, because you're taking on, there's emotional, this type where they haven't got any work, and there's all those things going on. I think I wasn't great at those things. I was good at going out and getting it and arguing about people's fees and reading contracts and changing wording and all that stuff. I got a real buzz, even for a High Yellow with my not a special attention to detail. I did work out that if you read a contract from a broadcaster, like every page, you'd find something that you didn't want in there.
Yeah.
And I had some very amusing conversations with business executives at various places. One of them, a broadcaster who remained nameless, said, "Oh, well, don't worry about that. No one understands what that means." And I said, "So you can't have it in the contract if you don't understand what it is."
Yeah.
And they said, "Yes, but nobody's ever taken it out." And I went, "Until today." And it came resent without all these extra pages. And genuinely, so I read it and thought, I don't actually understand a word of this. So I asked them to explain it to me. And because they couldn't, I said it had to come out. So it might never gone back in now.
We actually, I got talked into sponsoring the Bill podcast.
Oh,
the
really?
TV show.
Yeah.
So Manchester SEO, we sponsor their podcast.
Do you?
It's quite cool.
All right.
And they, a friend of the family, Sally Rogers, who was in the Bill for quite a few years, and Little Britain and that kind of stuff. She was talking about the important role that her agent played when she became pregnant.
Right.
And a supposedly lesbian role.
Yeah, I see.
And how that was, and the care for her on set and things like that. And tells a lovely story about how Pauline Quirk looked after her on her set because she didn't want to tell them that she was pregnant at first. But she was, and they were having to do a lot of physical stuff. And said the role of her advisor at the time was really important to protect her against.
Yeah, they're the bits that I used to really like.
Yeah.
Used to really like doing.
Yeah.
I remember there was a guy, and he was only like in his teens, and he was doing a music video back in like the early 90s.
Right.
And he phoned me the following day, said, I was there all night.
Yeah.
And I said, well, just, go to bed and I'll invoice them for a load of overtime. And then they phoned me and said, you can't invoice for a load of overtime. I said, I think you found a hat. And they said, well, I said, it's in the contract. You have to do it. It's a negotiated contract between whoever it was, whichever organisation, and which Equity would have negotiated at some point. And they said, but if we paid everybody, we'd be out of budget. And I remember saying, I'm not asking you to pay everybody. They're not my business. Only he is. So they said, all right. And they paid him. Sometimes you just need an argument. I remember there was a guy who I represented who was a TV psychologist. Yeah. And he was often like last minute, can he come on and talk about this or talk about that? And I was sort of winding up for the weekend one day, and I got a phone call to say, can he come on a breakfast show? in the morning. And I said, well, I'll ask him, but he's probably not going to want to get up on a Saturday morning and come into the studio. So they said, well, I'll tell you what, then we'll send the radio car to him. So I said, okay, I'll just see if he's happy to do it in his pajamas or whatever is outside his house. So I phoned him and he said, yeah, I'll do that. I said, okay. So I went back and I said, well, what sort of fee are you paying him? Oh, we're not paying him a fee. And I said, well, you're going to have to pay him a fee.
Yeah.
And I said, look, yeah, I understand it's like 5 minutes or whatever it might be, but it's his professional. I said, just pay him 50 quid or whatever it is, just so there is something.
Yeah.
Just the fact that he's taking his time. And they said, no, we can't do that. So I said, I'll tell you what to do is rather than my giving you his address, I'll give you my address. And they said, why are you giving him your address for? And I said, well, I'll do it. And they said, but you're not a psychologist. I went, aha, and that's why you want him. So they paid the money.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's just like, even for £50, right? There's nothing I was going to be earning out of it, but the sheer joy of just doing that was brilliant. But it's so weird that there was a time where people would say, oh yeah, it's good exposure. And they couldn't understand when I'd always go, they don't want that exposure. Like it's their job. If you don't pay them, they're not coming, right? That's just how that is.
So it's a real, it's massive exposure to different personalities, different people, different ways of communicating constantly. Is there anything like now from what you've done in the last 10 years where you go, I give that Ashley some advice now to go, this is a better way of doing it?
Yeah, definitely. I'll be changing the way I communicate with almost all people going back in the past. No, I would do, because the way I communicated with them is just as me, which if you told me differently, I would say, well, how else am I meant to communicate? But once you know that there are 4 different styles of people, you have to modify and adapt so that you work well with them. So I also am a qualified coach. I also coach people, and I've coached 4 people in the last 2 weeks from the same organization. And what is brilliant, because it doesn't really happen that often, each one of them is one of the 4 different IMA colors. So I changed the way so the last one, the most recent one, was a high red. And I got that from him within the first minute to 90 seconds. And whereas the others, I'm easing them in, we're having a bit of a chat, slowing it down, or with a high yellow, just messing about for a while to get them just relax before we start. It's the first time I'd ever actually met any of them. But with him, straight in. That's it.
Yeah.
And he appreciates that, obviously.
Yeah.
And the time goes by really fast when you do that. I mean, I actually, even though I'm not a high red, I like working with high reds. Their decisiveness is very good. Decision-making is always very interesting as well. I always feel that if they make a decision, they need to go away and think about it for a short period of time. I'm also learned, don't give them options. Just give them one option and see if they're interested. So if you give an option A or B and they choose A, but you secretly really wanted them to choose B, they're not going to be changing their mind that often. So it's very difficult.
Yeah.
Whereas high yellows tend to make their decisions in the moment and stick with them. I do it all the time. I've had like someone said, Ashley, do you want to do A or B? We'll do B. Are you sure? Yeah. They said, well, you can go away and think about it. Which I know I won't, right? Only when it comes back again. I said, what did I say last time? It will be that.
Yeah.
Because I sort of can visualize the end and then I just go with that. High greens need the detail, right? They will take their time. They make great decisions, by the way. You just have to wait around for them to be delivered. But they make great decisions because they look at all the data. They look at everything that's available and they make the argument about what's going to work and what's going to not. High blues also make good decisions, but they need reassuring all the time that they have made the right decision. So it's not only they that need to know to make the right decision, they need someone else to bounce off to say, look, am I making the right decision here? And you go, yeah, no, you're doing it. You're spot on here, or maybe you're not, whatever. But they need other people to bounce off to make their decision. So people go into sales training and they learn that people buy people. Well, that's certainly true of high yellows from each other. Less so true of everybody else. I think to some degree high blues, but you need to build trust with them over a period of time. High greens are interested in, as I say, taking a screwdriver and taking the back off to find out how it works. The salesperson's not relevant. And the high red is, can you get it me quickly? Can you get me a good price? Is it saving me time, right? Because they're obsessed about time. Is it saving me money? They don't care about the person.
Yeah.
But a high yellow cares about the person. So that it's not true that people buy people. Some people buy people.
Or you buy from the same people as you.
Well, that's easiest. I mean, I did work with a company many years ago in Sheffield, who were a software company.
Yeah.
And I worked with the directors, and I also worked with the sales team. And so I worked with the head of sales, who was the director twice. And he was a very, very jolly high yellow. And he said, I've got a problem. I hope you can help me. He said, we've got a customer. I know he's potentially going to order something more from us, but he really doesn't like me. And I actually hate going to see him. So, I said, talk me through who he is. And he described him. And I said, well, he's a high green. So I said, rather than you going, the opposite person who everything he really despises about people is setting in front of him, find someone of the same eye colour who can go and talk to him. And he said, well, this won't surprise you. We don't have any high greens in the sales team. And I said, don't send a salesperson, send a tech person. So we sent this woman. For what I understand, she spent an entire morning speaking to this man. She leaves and goes back to the office, and then he places in what was described to me as a not insignificant 6-figure sum. And she didn't know she was selling it to him. He didn't know she was selling it to him. And it worked because they weren't annoying each other. That's the point. He had lots of questions and he needed detailed answers, someone who's going to take time with him. And she did exactly that. She wasn't thinking, this is what I'm doing. She was just being herself. But she's the same eye colour as he is, so it worked really well. Whereas with the other guy, the high yellow was annoying him, so they couldn't actually ever spend enough time. One wants more time, the other one wants to leave.
I have a client that when you meet them is definitely a high yellow, but on communication that's maybe written or emails is exhibits just red.
Yeah, I thought you might say that, and I think they probably are a high red.
Yeah.
Because they've adapted to the fact. So why anybody is what I'm a colour they are, I have absolutely no idea.
Yeah.
But I think I'm pretty certain you're born with it. When I first started doing it, I was thinking, is this nature or nurture? I became an obsession. And then one day, years ago, I was just sat on my sofa at home with the remote control looking for something to watch. And I happened upon a program which I've not watched since, because really not my type of program, called The Secret Life of a 3-Year-Old. It was on Channel 4, really not my type of show.
Yeah.
But I got caught up on it because they were introducing all the cast, really, aren't they? The kids and their parents.
Yeah.
And I'm going, and these are like 3-year-olds. I'm going, he's a high green. She's definitely a high yellow. And I'm watching this. I thought, I'm going to watch this program to see if this turns out to be exactly as I thought, which it did. Like all their behaviours, communication was absolutely predicted by me from my sofa. So I thought, well, if that's how you come across and display those types of obvious communication styles at the age of 3, then you're going to be born with it, aren't you? You haven't got time to change. Yeah. And then I did a sort of audit of my life, of my friends and things I've liked doing and things I'm good at. And it fits my high yellow profile completely. And then that was the moment of like, right, I've really got this now.
Yeah.
But so, I mean, my brother and I are both high yellows, but our parents were high green and high red. So why we're high yellows, no one knows. In my own, so I'm married to a high red and I've got 2 children, adult children, but one's high yellow, one's high red. So we do match in that way. But I do recognise the fact that my son is a very skilled communicator, but he's a high red. When he's bored, he stops. So that's it.
Yeah, it's quite funny because I was preparing for the chat, I was thinking about it and thinking, I'm quite on this side, but actually through doing jobs like behind the tiller and being forced to talk to people and maybe sales roles and learning different skills, they're probably just coping mechanisms.
Yeah.
And
But it's it's a natural thing. So, you know, you're sat here now, you don't have any notes, you don't have anything, which is how I just think, I'll be all right.
I wing things. Yeah. I like doing it.
Yeah, because, well, for us, it's not winging. It's just what we do, right? It's how we talk. So when my kids were at school, I remember one of their friends' parents said to me, I want to talk to you about this colour thing because you want to know, I hate when they call it that, but that's what they do. And I can't remember who it was, name was son or daughter, but he kept saying that they were leaving everything to the last minute. And I said, is it proving to be successful? And he said, yeah. I went, that's because they're a high yellow. So that's fine. Encourage them to do it at the last minute. I mean, not the last second, right? But I mean, close to the deadline because the standard of work that they give is the best at that point. I would never suggest a high green does that because they need loads and loads of preparation. And that's the difference. So you play to your strengths. When I did some work with a law firm some years ago, and there was a high green amongst them, and I was saying about how high yellows like to go out and they'll talk to an audience and they like all those things, and high greens are the opposite. And then we had a drink afterwards, and he said, I want to challenge you on that, speaking to an audience. He said, you know, quite rightly, you say I'm a high green, and I've answered the questionnaire, and I recognise that. But he said, I'm a lay preacher. And he said, I go and talk to audiences in churches fairly regularly. So I said, how regularly? And he said, every 6 to 8 weeks. And I said, when's your next one? He said, well, I did one 2 weeks ago, so it'll be another 4 weeks. And I said, well, it's Friday now. If you got a phone call on Saturday morning saying, can you come in Sunday to speak, what would you do? He said, I'd say no. And I'd say, and that's the difference, because I'm not even religious, but if you asked me to come and speak to an audience and I'm free, I would have said yes. I'll find something to talk about.
Yeah.
And that's the difference. And he had to understand that actually he needed weeks and weeks of thought and preparation. And I'm sure what he delivered was very good. His tonality might be slightly flat. He's not going to be as, throwing his hands around and telling funny stories in quite the same way that a high yellow would be. But the preparation was quite key. So quite often everybody thinks that you should prepare like a high green, but actually only high greens should prepare like they're high greens. Everybody else should prepare according to their IMA colour. Make their life a lot happier.
Yeah. I've always assumed that it's laziness and I just go and do.
Yeah, but why is that though? That's because other people have told you that's, have you done this yet? Have you done that yet? No, not yet. But I know, so what quite often is I'll get asked to do something some months before, and I book it in, and I'll make sometimes I think in the moment, I just write down a load of notes what I'm going to do, and then I close the page on that, and then the week before, or actually that's not true, about 2 days before I'm meant to go, I write the same note again. Well, I don't, I write another note and see if it compares. And pretty much it always does. I think, well, I know what I'm doing. I'll just go and do it. That's it. I'm not encouraging anybody other than high yellows to do it. I am encouraging high yellows to do it, but I'm not encouraging anybody other than high yellows to do it because that's how it should be.
I know there's some people where when preparing to come on, so I started sending emails with a few more questions on, a bit more detailed, some kind of different topics that the questions fit into. Half the time, I just don't follow them anyway, but I think sometimes it's good for the mind to process something beforehand so that it comes up in...
Well, you sent that to me and I looked through it and thought, yeah, fine. I didn't need to, I just thought that this is going to be all right. I can see the fact I had to chase you for it, that you weren't that worried about it. So I thought, well, I'm in high yellow country here. I'll be perfectly safe. So one of the things that is identifying when you're getting an email from each of the, so high reds, I explained quite often, it would say James, few lines and out. A high green is going to be quite long. So when you get a very long email, it's from a high green. So then you have to reply accordingly. Otherwise, they're coming back to you for more information. And a high blue is always really friendly, quite often sometimes apologetic. I don't know what they're apologizing for, but it's very, very nice, very bouncy. High yellows are always relatively informal in their emailing and also quite quick. But quite often you can pick up on a high yellow email because there are words missing in sentences and all sorts of stuff, because they're typing at such pace. They're thinking about the next word while leaving the word they're meant to be typing out. Now, what's fascinating about that, as another high yellow, you're never going to notice that. High reds are working too fast. They're not going to notice it. High greens will notice it and will point it out to you. And the high blues will also notice it, but they won't point it out to you. See, that will keep happening. So when you get an email from somebody who doesn't have a facility where it picks up on the word attachment and says you haven't attached it, and then you get another one that says whoops with the attachment, they're high yellows, right? They're doing that all the time. Everything is working at pace. So then you know this is who I'm talking to, right? So at which point I always say to people, see if you can talk to them as opposed to emailing them, because I'd much rather have a face-to-face interaction or a phone call than an email or a text or any of those things. And not voice messages, by the way, because they're recorded. I'm talking about live interactions is where, as a high yellow, I'm going to be much more used. So if you want something from me, that's the way to do it. But I wouldn't do it with the other 3 stars. With a high green, I would give them loads and loads and loads of information and just wait for them to come back to me without chasing them, actually. High blues, again, friendly, open, non-assertive, encouraging them to do it. And high reds, which is what I do, is I work with lots of high reds. This is what I need. Goodbye. And it's amazing how quickly you will get a reply if you talk to people in their own language and not if it's not the same as you.
It's really interesting. Yeah. I've already split clients into different colours and thought, actually, I'm going to approach it like that.
And you know what? They will notice that there is, subconsciously, they'll notice that there's an improvement in your relationship, but they won't know why. So they're not going to challenge it or say, this is odd. James is normally not like this. They just won't notice. They'll just think, oh, this is good. And they'll just carry on, but it improves the relationship. If I always say the other thing is in emergency, when you get stuck with a client where you really, even though you've adapted and done everything that you can, still can't get past them. The chances are you are, but occasionally you won't do, is someone else in your organization who's the same eye colour steps in instead, because it will rescue the difficulty.
I struggle with dealing with the accounts teams and in clients' businesses, you know, chasing an invoice or something like that. There's always something that, you know, either you can't have a chat with them and just sort it out there and then, or there's 15 different emails when you...
But because if they're high green, which they're most likely to be, that is their preferred way of communicating. I can't, I'm now trying to remember how they would have coped without email. One of them definitely invented email.
Letters.
Well, it would have been letters. That's exactly right, because they are avoiding having a conversation with you a lot of the time because it's just not where they are comfortable, which again is fair enough. But you're the opposite of that. You just want to be able to pick up the phone and say, I need my invoice paying, please. But they don't like that. So the way to do it is to send them a long email with all the detail. Because if you're sending them a high yellow email, which the chances are, I suspect you are, they just get A, irritated by it, and B, sometimes not clear about what it is you actually want from it because you haven't said in lots and lots of detail. So I know it's painful for you, but you spend a lot of time, just a few more minutes, and you'll save yourselves a load of bother in the long term.
Makes a lot of sense. So what's the future holds for you? What's going on at the moment?
Well, I just love the work I'm doing with McDonald's. It's getting the crew to be able to communicate really well and the leadership to be able to communicate amongst themselves and with each other, which is fantastic. And then about putting the right people in the right job. So, you know, as I say, the first people you meet, I think anywhere in a hospitality environment should be a high yellow. That's who should be in the drive-through. That's who you want in the dining area in their restaurants with some high blues. And then there's so many other things where speed is massively important, obviously in their business. So high reds are brilliant at that. But most importantly for everybody, accuracy is the thing that is vital. Because if you get an order wrong, that's not that's going in the bin. So, I mean, that's coming out of their profits. And also, sadly, I'm assuming, I don't know if anyone else eats it, but it will be wasted.
Sure.
So the accuracy is really, really important. So high greens play a massively important role in that, to ensure that the customer gets exactly what they've ordered, and everybody's happy. And the closer I get to it as an organization, I've sort of fallen in love with it. I have to say that there's so many people who've been there for decades and have worked their way through and seem to be extremely happy working there. And they take such good care of everything. And you think, because they get a bad rap, but when you start working like sort of as an outsider on the inside, you suddenly think, this is a really wonderful organization.
Yeah.
So I'd like to do a lot more work. Every work I've done with them has been tremendous fun, apart from anything else.
Yeah.
And we're hoping that with one franchise particularly, that from January or February, the name badges will have little coloured dots on, so everybody will know if they're a high red, high yellow, high green, or high blue. That's good, isn't it?
Yeah. So it's more the talent acquisition, that kind of thing, and education of.
Yeah, and talking about education, actually, I do some work in schools as well. And what I really want to do, most of the work I've done in schools has been with the staff, which is fine, but I really want to work with the kids with it, and I'm going to be doing some of that in London actually early next year.
Okay.
Career choices. What's your IMA colour?
Yeah.
What is an IMA colour job you are going to follow? And there's loads of choices. So you're not going to be, left out, with nothing because you are one of those 4 IMA colours. One of the things I really want to get across actually is for them to know the 3 IMA colours that are not like them, and the jobs that would suit them, to know not to touch them under any circumstances.
Interesting. See how that'd be useful, especially for maybe pupil referral units and things like that, where maybe the kids haven't fitted in because the colour's different to what the school restrictions.
There's one in Greater Manchester that is using that in a pupil referral unit. Yeah. It's what was interesting is I've also did some work some years ago in primary school. 2 or 3 primary schools, actually. Okay. And what I found fascinating is, particularly when they're like year 4, so it's like they're 8 or 9, I can't remember how old they are, is how quickly they get it. It's amazing. And we started talking about jobs, and I thought, I don't want to know that many jobs. They'll just know things that their parents or friends have if they have jobs, and the teacher.
Yeah.
But some of them did, and they were asking, if I were to be a so-and-so, and I'm a high blue, would that work? And I was thinking, you're 9 years old, right? That's just an amazing question to ask me. But that was the thing I was fascinated, is the fact that how quickly they could understand IMA. And that's the great thing about IMA, unlike a psychometric. It's pared down where it just makes it really easy to understand, so much so that an 8-year-old or 9-year-old can ask me a really quite incisive question off the back of it. So,
yeah. That's interesting. You just assumed that they wouldn't be aware, but actually, I see it with my son where he's hyper aware of people and how they behave towards him, especially. Yeah, I see it being really interesting.
I think it's useful for if you're teaching kids to know what IMA colour they are, because you will assume that those that you may find difficult are just difficult, but they're probably not. And another teacher would say, "Oh, I don't find them difficult at all." And that will be the reason. Yeah. I mean, I'd love to think that you could maths, right, which is a subject you could teach. I mean, you couldn't, because you'd have to like treble the size of every school. But the idea is that you teach it. A high yellow teacher, high red teacher, high blue teacher, high green teacher would teach a group of people kids of the same IMA colour as them. And why I'm convinced it will work is that each of them would be learning at the same pace. That's a problem in a class of different IMA colours. We all want something different. And the teacher's only giving us their IMA colour.
Yeah.
So I remember at school for years, my best subject still would be, if I went back, was history. I loved history. And just by chance, again, when I did my life audit, I had high yellow teachers for that until the key 2 years where I was doing my exams. And then I had a high green teacher, so completely the opposite. And to me, he made it boring. So much so that I swapped out of his class to do a type of history I wasn't even interested in. But the teacher was high yellow. Now I realise that. I didn't know that at the time, although he was called Mr. Jolly. So I should have got a clue.
Well, everyone has teachers that they really connect with and have a big impact. And well, most people, there's one that they go, that person had an impact on me. And others will go, oh, I hated that lesson. So boring. Oh, it just didn't. So it makes perfect sense for a teacher to understand potentially different. But if you've got a class of 30 kids,
it's difficult. But that's why I think now I'm a trustee of a multi-academy trust, and I've seen how lesson plans and stuff are put together, and it's a lot different from when I was at school. It's a lot better. If anybody tells you, oh, education is not like it was in my day, that's true, because it's better now. Right? That it really is. It's much better. So there's so many stages throughout each lesson, every lesson, right? There's nothing veers away from it. So therefore it can accommodate all of those things. But the missing ingredient currently is that the students don't know about it with each other or the teacher. And I think if I can add that ingredient, then that would be the full, perfect lesson.
The circle. So how would people find you if they want to have a chat?
So I'm ashleyboroda.com. Drop me a line on my website. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm easy to find. And being a high yellow, always delighted to have a conversation. And, interestingly, I know that most of the people who I'm going to have to deal with to begin with when I work in an organization have to be either high red or high yellow. High greens and high blues won't initiate that conversation. And that's a tip for everybody, including high greens and high blues. If you're wanting to do business with a company, you need to find the right person. But if that right person, just by job title or by being sent by someone to say, oh, you know, that he or she is the person you need to speak to, if they're not a high red or a high yellow, that won't happen. That's not controversial. That is exactly what the truth is. And I've experimented on it. I was told by James Knight, who invented IMA, he said, you know, you go to an event and you meet people and they want to follow up with you. Don't worry about the high blues and the high greens because they're not coming back to you. And I thought, nah, that's not right. You know, I'm a lovable character. They'll come back to me, but that's over 10 years has proved to be completely correct. 100% correct as it happens. So yeah, that's another thing to know, isn't it? Who's the best person to talk to? What IMA color? Sometimes I'll get people answer my IMA questionnaire and then they'll go do some training with me. I might have 30, 40 people and then they'll share it. They'll go home, share it with their friends, share it with their families. They then take it to work and they share it. And then I might see a company where there's a pattern. Now, most people who answer it, I don't bother contacting. I think I'm not going to bother them. It's not my business. I'm just glad they know their IMA color. But sometimes I'll see a pattern like 30 people from one company and I think, I'm just going to find out where they know about this and see if they want to engage me to do some training. It's only ever happened actually where they said, yes, once. So it's not a successful system, but I look at the company. I look at the names of the people because I can see them. I then go on their website and see who does what. And then I find the most senior high yellow and drop them a line. And 100% of the time they reply. They don't say yes to me necessarily, as I've already pointed out, but they come back to me because I know that's going to work. And once you know this,
makes life
easier. No, it does make life easier.
It sounds like a really good place to stop, even though I could talk to you for ages.
Likewise.
It's very interesting. We must both be yellows.
No question.
We'll put all the contact details on description for anyone. I definitely recommend that people contact you because
and just so the training is 2 half days, a few weeks apart. It's very interactive. It's very good fun,
Yeah.
but it's a serious message wrapped up in a entertaining way.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for coming in.
Thank you for inviting me. Yeah,
Brilliant.
and
That was really
have to
good.
do